Chapter 186 Making a Move. The corners of Han Li's mouth moved slightly. He couldn't help but curse in his heart, but his tightly closed eyes had no choice but to open. Although his magic power was still a tiny fraction from being fully restored, there was a person coming his way. He didn't dare arrogantly continue to meditate, especially under conditions where he didn't know how things stood with the person who was coming. Which senior marshal brother is here? Quickly save this little sister. A woman wearing yellow robes came running out from the nearby forest, staggering to the bottom of the tree where Han Li was. She wore an expression of panic and raised her head to the treetop, calling for help. It was as if she had determined that up there was her own knight in shining armor. Not too far behind her, a person's white shadow walked over unhurriedly. Their behavior sharply differed from the woman's terrified appearance, as if they were feeling quite leisurely. Seeing all this, Han Li rolled his eyes. He was very unhappy with this woman's behavior of inviting disaster. As for her ability to discover the location of his hiding place, he did not find it surprising. Before all of the Yellow Maple Valley disciples had departed, sect leader Zhang Lingdao made use of a type of pulling magic that allowed these disciples, within a certain range, to perceive each other's position. Of course, this magic had a time limit on it, being only effective for 10 days. The purpose of this magic was to allow disciples of their own sect to support each other, thus greatly increasing their likelihood of success. It is said that the disciples of other sects were also under the effects of a similar magic technique. Han Li, having no other choice, gave the woman a glance. He actually recognized her. She was a fellow female disciple that stood together with junior marshal sister Chen. Apart from her figure, which could comparatively stir up many fires, her appearance was extremely plain. After Han Li had coldly stared at the woman's desperately pleading appearance, he did not carelessly and immediately jump off the tree. Instead, he closely sized up the white shadow following her through a very small gap in the leaves. Regardless of whether he saved the woman or not, Han Li wanted to gauge whether the magic power of the oncoming person was strong or weak before deciding. He did not want to stake his own small life for a woman who was a total stranger. If the white shadow's magic power was average, Han Li would of course make a move and kill them without any respect, thus acting as a hero saving a beauty. However, if their magic power was frighteningly deep, Han Li had to carefully consider whether he would join up with the woman under the tree to escape together, or if he would instantly escape without a trace. However, to prepare for any situation, he still placed his hand on top of his storage pouch, retrieving the Golden Beetle Swarm Mother Blade magic tool and a defensive talisman. In addition, he took the nameless transparent thread and deftly wrapped it around his finger. "Zeze, your running looks really ugly. Are all of Yellow Maple Valley's female disciples as useless as you?" The white shadow slowly walked closer, revealing their real face. In fact, it was a woman in her prime, wearing a white, flowing shirt. Her face also had some pleasant features, but her two eyebrows were slightly lifted, and she wore an evil expression. Although she spoke this word to the yellow-robed female under the tree, her eyes with killing intent kept drifting towards the top of the tree. It was evident that she was not as arrogant as she had said about herself. She still had some misgivings towards the hidden Han Li who would not reveal himself. 12th layer cultivation. Having easily seen the opponent's cultivation depth, Han Li's heart let out a breath. However, he still had a few suspicions. The disciple of the same sect under the tree also had a 12th layer cultivation, so how had she been chased to this miserable state? Did the opponent have some particular trick or some kind of strong magic tool? As Han Li was puzzling over this matter, the white-clothed female coldly made a hang noise. Suddenly, her sleeves were flung out, and two streaks of white light came flying out, directly rushing towards the yellow-robed female. "Senior Marshal brother, save me. My magic tools are all destroyed and I can't protect myself." The yellow-robed female's face drained of color, and she quickly cried out. These words had just left her mouth when two streaks of golden light came down like lasers from the treetop, meeting the white light halfway there and fighting it. It was Han Li who had activated the golden beetle swarm mother blade in his hand, and the two golden streaks were merely two of the blades. The yellow-robed female looked delighted, finally calming down. The only reason Han Li made a move was because on one hand, the white-clothed female was not so scary and that he could deal with her, on the other hand, it was so that he could find a helper for the rest of his journey to prevent him from going alone against enemies. After all, a 12th layer cultivator from the same sect would have use in future battles. Finally, you are willing to make a move. I thought that your esteemed self would continue to act mute and dumb. The white-clothed female said mockingly. Her face did not show any kind of surprise, but spreading her hand, a huge sphere of fiery light came charging directly towards the treetop. With a rumbling sound, the top half of the big tree emitted a bright red light, turning into ash in the blink of an eye. However, there was still no sign of anyone appearing, causing the white-clothed female to stare blankly. What a powerful, large fireball talisman, and this young lady was actually willing to part with it. Han Li said with an enigmatic smile. Han Li's figure suddenly appeared from behind the half-burnt tree. 11th layer cultivation? The white-clothed female first stared blankly, then revealed a disdainful expression. This occurred just as the yellow-robed female's expression had begun to relax, and she instantly started to panic, quietly complaining incessantly in her heart. She had originally thought that he was an expert senior martial brother from her sect, but didn't expect that it would actually be a novice junior martial brother whose magic power was not even as strong as hers. If you had just obediently hidden on the side and watched, perhaps this young lady would have been in a better mood and had mercy on you. But since you made a move, then both of you can stay lovers in death. The white-clothed female said sinisterly as her two eyebrows stood straight and became more violent. She allowed her originally somewhat graceful appearance to become malevolent. Han Li smiled lightly, and wordlessly controlling the vibrations of the golden blades, carelessly walking towards the woman. "Stand still, what are you trying to do?" The white-clothed female quick-wittedly shouted out, raising her hand and patting a protective talisman on her body to set up a barrier. At this time, Han Li was only 60 meters away from her. How unfortunate for him. In fact, the last time he used the transparent thread, easily killing the Heavenly Imperial Fortress, Han Li had taken a great interest in this battle tactic. When he was on top of the tree, he saw that the white-clothed female had not set up any defensive-type magic. Hit by a bout of inspiration, he naturally wanted to recreate the same scene from last time. Unfortunately, the opponent was very alert, having determined that something was not right very early on and quickly closed up this loophole. What caused Han Li to raise his head and sigh loudly was that females were indeed much more cautious than males. Since pulling a trick wouldn't work, naturally only using force remained. The previously disappointed Han Li did not waste any more words. After casting his defensive magic, he gently shook the golden beetle mother blade in his hand and viciously leaped towards his opponent. The yellow-robed woman saw that Han Li's magic tool was not ordinary, and moved with newfound initiative. Han Li immediately threw out a talisman, which became a long fire snake that shot out in that direction. The white-clothed female began to laugh coldly, her lily-white hands lightly propped up a palm-sized small mirror that appeared in her hands. She lightly shined the mirror, and a beam of greenish light shot out, blocking the oncoming golden blades and fire snake. Stopped in midair, the blades and the snake were left to spin aimlessly and were incapable of dropping, as if they were restricted by a spell. Han Li's eyes were straight. What was this magic tool? How was it so unnatural? Seeing as this magic tool could freeze in place the magic tools and magic skills of others, was it even possible to battle? Don't worry, junior martial brother, her magic tool can only freeze one area at a time, and every time it can only freeze for a quarter of an hour and a half before it loses its effectiveness. The yellow-robed female, seeing Han Li's shock, immediately consoled him. Only after hearing this was Han Li able to calm down, but the next sentence that the female disciple from the same sect said immediately caused Han Li's heart to once again jump. However, This evil woman is the descendant of one of Masked Moon Sect's elders and has many strange magic tools that have been passed down to her. It would be best for Junior Marshal Brother to be even more careful. Han Li was speechless. No wonder that of the two 12th layer female disciples, the senior martial sister from the same sect, would lose in such a sorry way. In fact, the opponent is a woman with many treasures. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have jumped out and shown off as a hero. Han Li already felt great regret, realizing that most likely another fierce battle was about to begin.